My name is Sarah Wallace. I'm 32. Last Thanksgiving, I sat alone at a splintered table, my only company a half-frozen turkey I couldn't bring myself to cook. But the part that still catches in my throat, what really gutted me, was the silence from the other end of the line. My sister Emily had read my text. She just didn't answer. And Dad? He'd told me they were too broke this year for a proper meal. Said he felt ashamed. Said it with that voice he uses when he wants me to feel sorry for him. What he didn't know was that I'd already wired them $2,000 the week before, for groceries, for the propane tank, for whatever emergency they couldn't name. What they didn't know was that I'd kept the receipt. How does someone go from being the one holding the family together to the only one not invited to dinner? It started with the sound of my own breath in the kitchen, no silverware clinking. No footsteps upstairs. Just that dull refrigerator hum and the ticking wall clock above the stove, off by 10 minutes as always. I had set the table for 4, like muscle memory. 1 for me, 1 for Dad, 1 for Mom, 1 for Emily. Then I'd taken the plates away, one by one. I sat at the far end with my arms crossed, eyes fixed on a single white plate. The turkey, overcooked on the outside, raw in the middle, sat untouched. The canned cranberry jelly still had the ridges from the tin. And the stuffing? Stovetop, 2 boxes, made for no one. Outside, the wind was rattling against the single-pane windows. Leaves scraped across the porch like tiny footsteps, scuttling from corner to corner. It was cold enough that I could see my breath fog the air every time I sighed. I don't know what made me look toward the living room. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe I just wanted to hear voices, even if it was reruns. But that's when I heard it, muffled laughter, a woman's voice, then 2, then clinking glasses. I froze. I wasn't playing anything on the TV, and the farmhouse is old, thin walls, but they don't carry sound like that unless someone's in the next room. I walked slowly to the archway, heart thudding in my chest. My hand gripped the doorframe out of habit. Same spot where I used to listen in on Emily's slumber parties, where I used to watch Dad pretend to fall asleep during football games while Mom painted her nails beside him. But now, silence. Just the flickering of the old ceiling light and the soft whine of the heater kicking in. The kind of silence that tries to convince you you're imagining things. My phone buzzed on the table behind me. I turned, hopeful. Emily, maybe? A text? A happy Thanksgiving? But it wasn't that. It was nothing. No new messages, no missed calls, just a glitch. My phone blinking as if someone had tried to reach me but changed their mind. I sat back down, letting my hands fall into my lap. My fingers curled into fists, then relaxed, then curled again. I stared at the turkey. Dad had said, "We can't do it this year, sweetie. Money's tight." But something about the way he said it, offhand, like it was a rehearsed line, like he'd already told it to someone else. I tapped on Emily's name again. The last message I sent still sat there, marked Read. Timestamp, 10:12 a.m. It was now 4:47 p.m. I rubbed my thumb over the corner of my phone. Something's off. Something's really off. Hey, if you've ever felt left out by family, hit that like button and subscribe now. We've got more real stories coming your way. The screen dimmed. The room darkened with it. Outside, a branch knocked against the glass like it was asking to be let in. I thought about all the holidays I'd funded, the ones I didn't attend because I was working too hard, when the truth was, I wasn't invited. I was always the ATM, the safety net, the invisible guest. The memory came back uninvited. Dad's voicemail from last week. "You're a blessing, Sarah. I don't know what we'd do without you." My throat tightened. I stood up too fast and the chair scraped against the hardwood. That's when I heard it again, this time clearly, a burst of laughter, a man's voice, glasses clinking, from the living room. I stepped back into the archway, TV off, fireplace dark. But the sound was real. Or maybe I was just cracking. I pressed my hand to my chest, counting the beats. 1, 2, 3. My legs were trembling, but I didn't sit. I walked to the window and looked out. The driveway was empty. No new tire tracks, no unfamiliar cars. I was alone, or supposed to be. A sudden knock, just one, came from the front porch. I blinked. No second knock. I opened the door. Nobody, just the wind. But there, tucked between the doorframe and the storm door, was a single sheet of paper, folded twice. My name on the outside, in handwriting I hadn't seen since high school. Uncle Tom. I unfolded it with shaking hands. 3 words. Watch her stream. That's all it said. No punctuation. No explanation. My eyes darted to the porch light flickering above. I stepped back inside and locked the door. Then I looked back down at the note. My hands were ice cold. My sister's a streamer, but I hadn't checked her page in weeks. I walked to the couch, grabbed the laptop. My fingers hesitated over the keys. Was I ready for what I might see? I typed her name. The page loaded, and there it was, a red banner at the top. Live. The second I clicked on the live stream, the glow of my laptop screen filled the dark room like a slap to the face. My heart pounded so hard it drowned out the wind outside, the ticking clock, everything. There she was, Emily, my younger sister, laughing on camera like nothing in the world could touch her. The screen shimmered with warm candlelight. Gold and burgundy decorations framed the shot, leaves, miniature pumpkins, satin napkins, and in the middle of the table, a roasted turkey, glistening under the soft light. The kind of turkey you only get when you've spent the whole day basting and photographing every angle like a magazine shoot. I leaned closer. Champagne flutes clinked just off screen. More laughter. A man's voice, probably that new boyfriend she only referred to as Jay, said something about the family fund. Emily lifted her glass, the diamond bracelet on her wrist catching the light like a warning flare. She was wearing the necklace I bought her last Christmas, the one she never once thanked me for. "Cheers to us," she giggled, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "And cheers to the fun that made this all happen." The camera tilted slightly, revealing more guests. 4 of them, all with plates, full glasses, and wide grins. All cozy in the farmhouse dining room. My parents' dining room. I blinked. No, that couldn't be right. I adjusted the screen, zoomed in. There was no mistaking it. The scratched oak buffet, the crooked family photo above the fireplace, the antique clock that had stopped working in 2004, but Mom refused to take down. They weren't at some friend's house. They were in my parents' house. I sat back, breath caught in my throat. They said they were too broke for Thanksgiving, said the water heater blew, said they couldn't even afford gas to drive into town, and yet here they were, hosting a full Thanksgiving feast without me. Emily leaned into the camera, grinning like she was drunk on her own performance. "For everyone asking, no, this isn't sponsored," she said with a mock pout. "It's just family generosity, you know. That's what the holidays are about." My stomach turned. My hand hovered over the keyboard, tempted to close the tab, pretend I hadn't seen it. But then a comment popped up in the live chat. It was small, almost buried between emojis and heart reactions. "Is that Sarah's money?" I froze. I read it again, then again. The comment disappeared, swallowed by the flood of compliments and cheers. But I saw it. Someone knew. Someone knew exactly what I was afraid to admit. I felt the pressure build behind my eyes before I even realized I was crying. The room blurred. I couldn't tell if I was shaking from rage or heartbreak or both. My hands gripped the edge of the table, knuckles pale, nails digging into the wood. This wasn't just forgetting to invite me. This was something else. Something worse. They lied. Deliberately. Collectively. A twisting laugh echoed from the screen. Emily had moved on to some silly game, naming everyone's highs and lows of the year. When it got to Mom, she said, "My high, right now, this exact moment." I watched her sip her wine, wearing a deep burgundy sweater I'd mailed her last fall. Still had the tag on it when I found it in her closet last May. My chest burned. "Turn it off," I whispered. But I didn't, because I couldn't, because a part of me needed to see how far they were willing to go. When it got to Emily again, she leaned back in her chair and purred, "The best part about this year, finally learning how to invest in myself, and in people who actually show up for you." She looked right at the camera. Or maybe I just imagined it. I slammed the laptop shut. The sound cracked through the room like thunder. I stood there in the dim light of the kitchen, palms flat against the table, head hanging low. What did I ever do to them? I paid the bills. I skipped vacations to send Dad money when the roof leaked. I sent Emily gift cards just because. I kept quiet when Mom asked for help until payday and never paid it back. I was always the helper, the fixer, the one who got left behind so the others could go ahead. And now they were celebrating in my absence. I stumbled to the sink and splashed cold water on my face. The chill didn't help. It just made me more aware of how empty the house felt, how quiet, how still. My phone buzzed. I didn't even want to look, but I did. A notification from the same platform Emily streamed on. Emily Live, thanks for a record-breaking Thanksgiving stream. Replay available now. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the phone, the laptop, the cold turkey, everything. But I didn't. Instead, I walked to the fridge, opened it, and stared blankly at the sad plastic container of potato salad I'd made the night before. No one liked it but me. I closed the fridge. Back in the living room, I sank onto the couch and curled into myself. I thought about the way Dad said, "It's been a hard year, kiddo." About how Emily had asked for money in April, just a loan, to help launch her content studio. I thought about that word again. Fund. What kind of fund? My mind raced, connecting dots I didn't want to admit were there. The missing pieces. How Dad always hesitated when I asked for receipts. How Emily never explained what her studio actually did. How Mom deflected whenever I brought up the holiday plans. What if the money I'd been sending wasn't going to keep the lights on, but to power the ring light for Emily's influencer career? What if they'd been using me for years? My chest tightened. I glanced at the folded note still sitting on the coffee table. Watch her stream. Uncle Tom had known, or suspected. Either way, he wanted me to see this. But why? Why now? What was he trying to tell me? My thoughts swirled as I lay there trying to make sense of it. Then another message popped up on my phone. This time, a text. It was from Dad. Just 4 words. Call me tomorrow. Important. I stared at it. The gall, the timing, the nerve. My hand hovered over the reply box, but I didn't write anything. Not yet. Instead, I whispered to the room, "My money?" The words tasted bitter coming out. But they felt real. And suddenly, I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was angry. Dad called at 7:42 a.m. I stared at the screen as it rang, the cold air from the cracked kitchen window brushing against my bare arm. I hadn't slept, just laid there most of the night, replaying Emily's stream in my head, her champagne toast, Mom's perfect hair, the clink of silverware at a table I wasn't invited to. The screen buzzed again. My thumb hovered. I answered. "Hey, kiddo," Dad said, voice coated in forced cheer. "Hope I didn't wake you." His tone was the same one he used when I was 7, and he broke the vase in the hallway, then made me promise not to tell Mom. Sweet, disarming, strategic. "I was up," I said, keeping my voice flat. He cleared his throat. "Look, I didn't want to bring this up on a holiday, but we've got a situation." "Of course you do." I waited. He exhaled. "We need some help with the house. Furnace is acting up, and there's, some back taxes we didn't know about. Caught us off guard. It's about $4,127. I didn't say anything. Just let the silence stretch. Outside, a squirrel scrambled across the porch railing, scattering brittle brown leaves. The old maple tree creaked in the breeze like it was holding its breath too. "We'll pay you back," he added quickly. "You know we always do." That was the first lie of the morning. I stepped into the living room and sat on the arm of the couch. My hand found a balled-up corner of the throw blanket and twisted it. "You had a party," I said. There was a pause. "What?" "Thanksgiving," I said slowly. "You had a full dinner. Emily live-streamed the whole thing. A beat. 2. Then, well, we thought she was just doing a little thing for her followers. Wasn't supposed to be a big deal." "She toasted to the family fund, Dad." He sighed again, deeper this time, more theatrical. "Sarah, come on. You know how she is. Dramatic. Always exaggerating." My chest burned. "Did my money pay for that dinner?" Another pause. The sound of him shifting in his chair, wood creaking. "We used what we had to make it nice for everyone. It's been a rough year and, your mother needed something to lift her spirits." I almost laughed. She needed champagne and 2 turkeys? Now his voice tightened. "That's not fair. You don't know what we're dealing with." "No," I said. "I don't. Because no one tells me anything unless it comes with a price tag." His voice dropped to that low, worn-out tone he used when he wanted to sound like a martyr. "Sarah, you've always been the dependable one. I don't know why you're acting like we betrayed you. Because you did. I didn't say it. Not yet. Instead, I asked, what happened to the $2,000 I sent last month? Silence. Then, that went to bills, propane, groceries, you know that. I didn't believe him, and he knew it. I'll wire you the amount, I said, eyes fixed on a spot on the carpet where the threads had come loose. But this is the last time. He hesitated. You don't mean that. I do. He was quiet. Then, in the softest voice I'd ever heard from him, it's just money, Sarah. Don't let it come between us. But that was the problem. It always had. We hung up a few minutes later. No goodbye. No love you. Just the sound of him clearing his throat and saying, thanks. I sat there in the hush that followed, the sun now slipping through the blinds in crooked lines. The dust in the air danced like it had nowhere else to be. My phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. Meet me out back, alone. No name, just that. I stared at it. Then another text came in. Uncle Tom. I threw on a hoodie and boots and stepped onto the porch. The cold hit harder this time, like a slap of reality. I walked around the side of the house, boots crunching over frost-hardened grass. Tom was standing by the edge of the barn, hands in his pockets, wearing that old denim jacket with the frayed collar. He looked like he hadn't slept either. Didn't think you'd come, he said. I wasn't sure I should. He glanced at me, then back toward the horizon, where the sun was trying to crawl above the trees. I saw the stream, he said. Didn't sit right with me. You knew? I had a hunch, he said. That's why I left you the note. I shifted my weight, waiting. He pulled something from his pocket, a folded scrap of yellow paper, brittle at the corners. I found this in your dad's desk drawer, he said, handing it to me. Wasn't supposed to see it. I unfolded it slowly. It was a ledger, handwritten, amounts, dates, names, and one entry circled in red. October 12th, Sarah Wire, $2,000, deposit into EF account. My throat closed. EF? I asked. Tom shrugged. Your guess is as good as mine, but that was 3 days before your sister got that new lighting set up in her studio. I looked down at the numbers again. My name, my money. Why are you showing me this? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. He looked tired. Because you deserve to know, and because I've seen this before. Your dad, he's been playing this game for years. Uses one kid to bail out another, plays the martyr, keeps the secrets tight. The wind picked up, biting through my jacket. What do I do? I asked, the question cracking open something in me I hadn't admitted aloud. Tom sighed. I can't answer that, but maybe start with looking in places they never wanted you to. He nodded once and walked back toward his truck. I stood there long after the engine rumbled to life, clutching the paper, watching the exhaust curl into the gray morning sky. The note felt like it weighed 100 pounds in my hand. When I stepped back inside, I opened the kitchen drawer, pulled out the old key Mom said belonged to the attic trunk. I hadn't thought about it in years. Maybe now was the time. But before I could go upstairs, my phone lit up again. Dad, voicemail this time. I pressed play. His voice was low, rushed. Hey, something's come up. We need to talk, soon. You can't tell anyone I called, not even Tom. Then a click. That was it. I stared at the screen, pulse racing. Something wasn't adding up, and now I needed to know what else they were hiding. The attic hadn't changed. Same crooked floorboards, same damp, dusty smell, same single bulb swinging from the low ceiling like a tired eye that never quite closes. I pulled the cord and winced as the light flickered, stuttered, then glowed steady. I hadn't been up there in years, not since Mom asked me to store away the Christmas boxes one bitter January when Emily claimed her back hurt too much to climb stairs. That was when I still believed her, when I still believed them. Now I stood there, fists clenched around a small brass key and the brittle ledger folded in my coat pocket. The air was sharper up here, colder, like the lies had settled into the rafters over time and never quite left. I found the trunk shoved behind a stack of broken picture frames and water-damaged cardboard boxes. Dust blanketed everything, thick enough to smudge under my touch. I knelt, slid the key into the lock, and twisted. It clicked. Inside, it smelled like old paper and glue. I pulled out the first folder, the edges curled from time and moisture. birth certificates, report cards, tax returns, and then, beneath a faded bank envelope, receipts, dozens, all in my name. Electric bills, water bills, repair services, all recent, all marked paid. But I hadn't paid them, at least not directly. I sifted faster now, fingers trembling. One receipt listed a transaction on October 12th, same date from the ledger, $2,000, transferred, no vendor name, just FF. I sat back on my heels, heart thudding in my ears. Family fund. The words rang louder now, like they echoed off the walls. They created a bank account in my name, or used one of mine. My hands moved without thinking, flipping through more envelopes. I found one, newer than the rest, with my bank's logo. Inside was a printed statement, one I'd never seen before. I skimmed it. My name, my address, but a different account number. A secondary savings account I'd forgotten even existed, and there it was, $2,000 in. Then, 3 days later, 1,187's out. Withdrawal location, Grove City, Ohio. Emily's zip code. I dropped the statement on the floor, my legs folded under me. I covered my mouth with both hands and stared at the ceiling. It was real. They were using my name, my money, my credit, and they didn't even bother to ask. I shut the trunk slowly. My fingers brushed something hard near the hinge, a photo. It slipped loose, curling at the corners, yellowed with age. Dad and Emily at a bank. She's holding a check. He's smiling, not the forced smile I knew from holidays, but a real one, the kind he used to reserve for me. Something in my chest cracked. I clutched the photo so tight it crinkled in my hand. My stomach turned. Why her? Why always her? I stood and walked to the attic window, rubbing the fog from the glass. Outside, the late afternoon sun dipped behind the barn, casting long shadows across the backyard. Cold light spilled through the trees like spilled milk on a dirty counter. They used me, and they didn't even try to hide it. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Emily. "Hey, sorry I missed your call. Everything okay?" I hadn't called her. I stared at the message, pulse hammering. The emoji at the end made my skin crawl. I replied with one word. "Seriously?" 3 dots bubbled, then vanished. I waited. Nothing. I shoved the phone back in my pocket and stomped downstairs, the attic creaking behind me like it was groaning under the weight of what I'd just seen. In the kitchen, I dumped the receipts and photo onto the table, stared at them like puzzle pieces I couldn't fit together. Or maybe I didn't want to. A sound pulled my focus, front door creaking. I looked up. Mom. She stood in the doorway like she'd forgotten how doors worked. Her coat was buttoned crooked. A plastic grocery bag hung from her left wrist. "Didn't mean to startle you," she said, voice small. "You didn't knock," I said. Her eyes darted to the receipts. The photo, then to my face. I watched her throat move as she swallowed. "Your father said you might be looking through things." That word, things, made my jaw tighten. "What is this?" I asked, nudging the bank statement toward her. She didn't sit, just held the grocery bag like a shield. Her lips parted, closed again. Then, "It was supposed to be temporary." I blinked. "What was?" She set the bag on the floor and took one slow step in. "The account, the transfers. We needed help, Sarah. You know how tight things have been." "I've been helping," I snapped, "for years." "I know," her voice cracked. "You just didn't know about that part," she added softly. I stared at her, then laughed once, dry, humorless. "That part? That's theft, Mom." She flinched. "Don't say that." I rose from the chair. "Why not? Because it makes it real?" "No," she whispered, "because I didn't want you to find out like this." I stared at her, heart pounding. "Then how?" She shook her head, eyes glistening. "I don't know. I thought maybe we'd fix it before you noticed. Maybe Emily would start earning. Maybe your dad would—" "Stop lying?" I finished. Silence. She didn't deny it. I pressed my hands into the table edge, willing myself to stay calm. Then I asked, "Who else knows?" Her eyes dropped to the floor. "I don't know what you mean." I stepped closer. "Was Uncle Tom part of this?" "No," she said quickly, too quickly. "Then why did he leave me the note?" She looked up then, panic flickering. "What note?" My heart slowed. "You didn't know?" She stepped back, just a half step, but enough. "What did it say?" she asked. I didn't answer. I couldn't, because suddenly I wasn't sure who I could trust. She picked up the grocery bag, hands trembling. "I just came to drop off soup," she said. "Your favorite." "I'm not hungry." She paused in the doorway, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. "You don't understand, Sarah. Your father, he had reasons." I held the photo up. "These look like excuses." She stared at the image for a long moment, then said, "He did it for her. He always does." And with that, she walked out, letting the door creak closed behind her. I stood there, photo in hand, the house silent again, until my phone lit up once more. A voicemail, unknown number. I pressed play. The voice was low, scratchy, unfamiliar, but the words sent ice down my spine. "The inheritance is at stake. Don't trust them, not even your mother." The voicemail kept replaying in my head as I drove back to the farmhouse. "The inheritance is at stake. Don't trust them, not even your mother." The words had settled like lead in my chest, colder than the November wind threading through the cracked window of my car. I hadn't even realized I was gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles ached. My phone sat in the cup holder, silent now, but somehow louder than ever. It was late, just after 10. The porch light was still on. I didn't knock. The front door creaked open like it remembered me, like it knew what was coming. Inside, the house smelled like burnt onions and old wood polish. The leftover remnants of Thanksgiving, gravy-stained dish towels, empty pie tins, a half-filled bottle of Chardonnay on the counter, clashed with the tension tightening the air. They were all in the dining room. Dad sat at the head of the table like a king without a crown, fork halfway to his mouth. Emily was scrolling her phone, one leg folded under her. Mom stood stiffly by the sink, drying a plate she'd already dried twice. No one spoke when they saw me. I dropped the photo on the table. It landed face up. Dad's smile, Emily's check. "I want the truth," I said. My voice was quiet, but it carried. Emily blinked. "What is this?" "You tell me," I replied. Dad set his fork down, wiped his mouth slowly. "Sarah, now's not the time." "No," I snapped. "Now is exactly the time." He leaned back, arms crossed. "You're being dramatic." I laughed once, sharp and humorless. "Then explain this," I said, holding up the bank statement. "And this." I tossed the ledger down. "And the receipts in my name, and the live stream. Explain all of it." Emily looked from me to Dad, then back. "This isn't how I wanted you to find out." "You mean you planned for me to find out eventually?" I asked. "After the damage was done?" Mom stepped in, her voice low. "We didn't mean to hurt you, honey." "But you did." My hands curled into fists at my sides. "You used my money. You opened accounts under my name. You lied. And when I asked, when I gave you a chance, you stood there and said nothing." Dad rose slowly from his chair. "You don't understand the pressure I've been under," he said, voice tightening. "The house, the taxes, your mother's medical bills." "My medical bills?" Mom said, blinking. "What are you talking about?" He froze. We all looked at him. "What bills, Tom?" she asked again, this time quieter, colder. Dad glanced at Emily, then down at the table. I felt it before I fully understood it. Something shifting. Something breaking loose. "You forged it, didn't you?" I said. "You used me to fund her stream. You moved money through my account and made it look like I agreed." "That's not true," he barked, stepping forward. "You sent us money willingly." "Not for this," I snapped. My chest heaved. "I sent money for propane, groceries, bills, not for cameras and lighting rigs and catered Thanksgiving feasts." Emily stood now, arms crossed. "This was supposed to help everyone." "Help?" I said, stunned. "You made me eat Thanksgiving dinner alone." Dad's voice dropped. "You're overreacting." "No," I said. "I'm waking up." I reached into my bag and pulled out the manila envelope I'd stuffed with copies of everything. I laid it all on the table. Bank statements, receipts, the ledger, the live stream screenshots. I looked at each of them in turn. "You don't get to gaslight me anymore." Dad's jaw twitched. Emily sat back down, finally quiet. Mom was still standing, towel clutched in her hands like a lifeline. She wasn't defending him anymore. Not this time. Then I pulled out the final piece. A printed screenshot of the bank transfer that funded Emily's studio setup. Emily's eyes widened. "Where did you get that?" I found the transaction in the attic, I said. Dad moved the money 3 days after I sent it. Right into your zip code. Right into a checking account labeled EF. You want to tell me what that stands for? She didn't answer. I turned to Dad. Want to explain how you got access to my secondary account? His silence was all I needed. That's theft, I said. And identity fraud. He stepped forward again, his voice low and tight. You're not going to press charges. Why not? Because we're family. The word hung there, rotten in the air. That word doesn't mean what you think it does, I said. Family doesn't lie, family doesn't steal, family doesn't make one person carry everything. I did this for you, he said, louder now, so Emily wouldn't end up like us, struggling. Emily flinched. So it's okay for me to struggle? I asked. You could handle it, he said. You've always been strong. My voice cracked. That doesn't make it fair. Silence filled the room again. Then I said what I'd come here to say. I'm done. Dad stared at me. Emily blinked. Mom whispered, Sarah, I'm done funding this circus. I'm done being the backup plan. From now on, you want something. You earn it. Emily stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. You think you're better than us now? I turned to her. No, I think I finally see you clearly. I started gathering my papers. You walk out that door, Dad said, voice rising. You don't come back. I know, I said. He didn't expect that. I moved to the door, hand on the knob, then I turned back. One more thing, I said. What inheritance? He blinked. What? I got a voicemail. Someone said, the inheritance is at stake. You want to explain that? Emily's head snapped up. Mom froze. But Dad, he went pale. I don't know what you're talking about, he said too quickly. I nodded once. I figured. Then I walked out, heart pounding so loud I couldn't hear the wind. I didn't go home right away. Instead, I sat in my car on the edge of town, parked beneath the rusted street lamp outside an old diner that hadn't changed since high school. The windows glowed faintly, warm and fogged, like someone was still inside, cleaning, closing, waiting. But I stayed in the dark, watching the condensation form on my windshield, breathing in shallow bursts. The voicemail echoed again in my mind. The inheritance is at stake. Don't trust them, not even your mother. Not even her. The words thudded like a warning I hadn't wanted to hear, but now they felt like truth. Ugly, quiet truth that settles into your bones when everything else falls away. My phone buzzed. It was Mom. I didn't answer. Then another buzz. A voicemail this time. I played it without thinking, eyes fixed on the fog outside. Sarah, I know things are tense right now. Can we talk? I think it's time I told you some things I should have said years ago. Please just come by. Alone. The line clicked off. I stared at the screen, my thumb trembling just slightly. It was the first time she hadn't tried to defend him. That alone made my stomach twist. 10 minutes later, I was pulling into her driveway. The porch light was off. Only the living room lamp glowed through the sheer curtains. I stepped out into the cold, gravel crunching under my boots. The air smelled faintly of wood smoke and cinnamon, like someone was trying to create a memory that didn't belong to this moment. She answered on the second knock. She looked older, smaller, like the weight of the past 48 hours had started to press her down. Her eyes were red. Her sweater, oversized and sagging at the shoulders, clung to her like a memory she couldn't shake. Come in, she said softly. I followed her into the kitchen. The heater ticked faintly as it kicked on. A kettle hissed on the stove. I made tea, she said, already reaching for the mugs. I sat at the table, fingers curled around the hem of my coat, tugging it slightly, an old habit from childhood I hadn't outgrown. She poured, then sat across from me, wrapping her hands around the mug before she said anything else. I saw your face when you asked about the inheritance. I waited. She looked at me for a long time, like she was trying to find the right version of herself to begin with. I wanted to tell you. So many times. Then why didn't you? Her gaze dropped to the table. Because I was scared. Because your father, he has a way of turning the truth into guilt. And because I thought, if you never knew, you wouldn't have to feel like this. Like what? She looked up. Like everything you've done for this family wasn't by choice. My breath caught. "I never chose any of this," I said. "I was just trying to help." "I know." She exhaled, a soft, shaky thing. "There is an inheritance. Your grandfather left a trust. He set it up for you, me, and Emily, equally. But it couldn't be touched until next year, his 10-year clause. He didn't trust your father to manage it, not after what happened with the mortgage." I leaned in. "So Dad knew about this the whole time?" "Yes," she said, "and he was furious. Said it was an insult. That it was meant to be corrected before the funds were released, and when you started making money, he saw a way to even it out early. He said we could front-load your share and rebalance later." My heart sank. "So all the money I gave you," she nodded, "was never about the house or the bills. He was making it look like you'd already received your third." "And Emily?" Mom hesitated. "She knows about the trust, but I don't think she knows how your money played into it." I stared at her. "And you just let it happen?" "I tried to stop it," she whispered, "but he threatened to cut me off, said he'd change the will, remove my name from everything, said I'd end up alone, and—" I believed him. Her voice broke. "I'm so tired, Sarah." I looked at her, really looked. And for the first time in years, I didn't see my mother. I saw a woman worn thin by choices that never should have been hers, but that didn't erase what she'd done, or what she hadn't. "You could have told me." "I know," she whispered. Outside, wind scraped the window pane. Inside, the silence stretched. Then she said, "There's more." I braced myself. "Your grandfather also left a letter, for you. It's in the safe deposit box. I only saw it once. He said to give it to you when the trust matured." "What does it say?" "I don't know. But he said it would explain everything." I felt something shift in me. Not hope, not yet, but maybe direction. "And the voicemail?" I asked. "Do you know who sent it?" She shook her head. "But I've had a feeling someone's been watching this play out. Your grandfather had friends, people who didn't trust your father." Her hands trembled slightly. "He always said secrets rot in silence." I stood up slowly, my fingers still curled tight. "I'm done being silent," I said. "You should be too." She nodded. Tears welled, but she didn't wipe them. As I walked to the door, she said one more thing. "I never wanted you to carry this alone." I paused, turned. "You just let me anyway." Then I left. Outside, the cold hit harder. I sat in the car, hands still trembling, when another message buzzed through. Unknown number again, just 3 words this time. "Check the will." I didn't sleep that night. The message, "Check the will," looped in my head like static I couldn't silence. I lay on the couch fully dressed, eyes open in the dark, the edges of the ceiling fan blades just barely visible in the moonlight. Every creak of the old house made me tense. Every vibration from my phone made me flinch. At 6:03 a.m., I stood up, my back sore, my mind sharp. I'd reached the edge. Jake stirred in the bedroom. His voice was muffled, still coated in sleep. "You okay?" I stepped into the doorway. "No," I said quietly, "but I know what I need to do." We sat at the kitchen table, the silence heavy between us as I stirred a spoon through coffee I had no intention of drinking. Jake didn't push, he never did, just sat there, watching me like he already knew something in me had cracked, and there was no taping it back together. "I'm blocking them," I said. He nodded once. "I don't know if it'll change anything," I added, voice shaking just slightly. "But I can't keep doing this. I can't be the one answering every crisis while they sit around acting like I'm some sort of backup account." "You don't have to explain," Jake said, his hand sliding across the table to cover mine. "You deserve peace, Sarah." His touch steadied me. I picked up my phone, hovered over Dad's name. My thumb tapped more, then block. It asked if I was sure. I was. For the first time in my life, I was. I blocked Emily next, then Mom. Each name faded to gray, each breath came a little easier, but the space they left behind wasn't empty. It pulsed with years of resentment, confusion, guilt, a weight I hadn't even known I'd been dragging until I finally let go. Still, it wasn't peace. Not yet. Not until I understood why. Why they'd chosen her, why they'd needed to erase me to empower her, why the word inheritance made Dad flinch and Mom cry, why they only reached for me when they were sinking. Later that afternoon, I sat in Dr. Carter's office for the first time. The room was warm, soft lighting, no harsh edges. A small diffuser hissed faint lavender into the air, trying to convince my nervous system it was safe, but nothing about me felt safe anymore. I sank into the armchair, the leather groaning slightly beneath me. Dr. Carter sat across from me, notebook in her lap, legs crossed. Her voice was low, steady. "So, Sarah," she said, "where do you want to begin?" I blinked at her, then at the floor. "I think my family's been stealing from me," I said. I didn't soften it, didn't say misusing or misunderstanding. She didn't flinch. "Tell me more." And so I did. I told her about Thanksgiving, the fake broke story, Emily's stream, the fund, the ledger, the receipts, the voicemail, the trust, the lie. I told her about how I was raised to believe love meant giving everything, even if no one ever gave back. When I was done, she sat quietly for a moment, letting it all hang in the air. "What I'm hearing," she said, "is that you were assigned a role in your family that served everyone but you." I nodded slowly. "I was the fixer. And what happened when you stopped fixing? They fell apart. And how did that feel?" "Like I wasn't allowed to stop," I said. "Like peace was something I had to earn, and I'd never be worthy enough to cash in." She nodded. "Have they ever shown you what it looks like to support you?" I blinked. "No." My voice cracked. "No one ever asked how I was doing. Not once." A long pause, then her voice softened. "Then let's start by redefining what you deserve." The rest of the session blurred, but I remember one thing she said near the end, when I asked how to deal with the guilt. "Boundaries are not a betrayal, they are an act of self-respect." I held on to that like a rope in a storm. When I left, Jake was waiting in the car. He didn't say anything, just handed me a sandwich and turned up the heat. We sat in silence on the drive home, but it wasn't tense. It was full. When we got back to the apartment, he wrapped his arms around me in the hallway, kissed the side of my head. "I'm proud of you," he said. I didn't respond, because part of me wasn't ready to believe it yet. Later that night, I opened a notebook. On one side, I wrote down every time I bailed someone out. How much, when, why. I did the math. The total stunned me. On the other side, I wrote what I could have done with that money. Down payment, grad school, travel, my own business. It wasn't just about the cash. It was about everything I gave up because I was afraid to say no. And now I wasn't afraid anymore. But the question still burned. What was in the will? Why did Dad want it buried? Why was Emily always the chosen one? And who kept texting me, these warnings, this insight? I closed the notebook. The phone buzzed again. No name. This time, a picture. A weathered key with a tag, Grandpa's initials, and a note, scrawled in pen below it. "You're closer than you think." The key arrived the next morning. No note, no explanation. Just a plain manila envelope left on my doorstep, postmarked from Columbus, no return address. Inside, cushioned between folded tissue paper, was a small tarnished brass key. Its surface was scratched with age, but the letters carved into the tag were unmistakable. EFW, my grandfather's initials. I ran my fingers along the grooves. My heart knew where it belonged before my mind caught up. The attic. Again. By the time I pulled into the gravel drive of the farmhouse, the late November sky had turned the color of damp slate. The trees were bare now, their black silhouettes tangled like reaching fingers against the pale clouds. The house looked empty. Or maybe it just felt that way now, like it had already surrendered the lie of being a home. I let myself in with the spare key Mom had hidden under the broken planter since I was 12. Some things never change, and some things change so fast you can't keep up. The floors creaked as I stepped inside. Every sound in the house was louder now, without voices to cover them. No TV murmuring in the background. No clink of dishes. Just stillness. And the ticking of a hallway clock that I didn't remember ever working. I climbed the stairs to the attic slowly, holding the railing with one hand, the key tight in my pocket with the other. At the top, the air was sharper. Cold. The kind that stings your nose as you breathe. I tugged my coat tighter and crossed the warped floorboards. In the far corner, behind a leaning stack of holiday storage bins, was a wooden chest I hadn't seen before, smaller than the trunk from before, thicker, with a keyhole shaped like a diamond. I knelt, breath fogging in the air, slid the brass key into place. It turned with a soft, reluctant click. Inside, beneath a folded tartan blanket and a crumbling manila folder, was a box, locked with a leather strap, and under that, bundled letters. Dozens, yellowed, curled, bound with brittle string, each one addressed to the same name, Sarah Faye Wallace. My breath caught. I lifted the first envelope, the paper delicate, almost transparent in spots. My name was written in my grandfather's steady, heavy cursive, each letter deliberate, like he'd wanted to make sure I never forgot I was meant to read it. I opened it. The letter trembled in my hands, even as I tried to steady them. Sarah, if you're reading this, I'm gone. But you're exactly where you're supposed to be. This family's legacy has been tangled in silence long enough. You deserve truth, not just about the trust, but about who you are and what you carry. I stopped there. My pulse was a drum in my ears. I read the letter twice more, every word burrowing deeper. He spoke of mistakes, his, my father's, even my mother's, of money hidden, of a will rewritten twice in secret, of promises broken long before I ever knew there were promises to keep. And then there it was, a phrase that split something in me. They took your name off the original trust. I sat back, clutching the page. Took me off? But how? I scanned the next few letters, details scribbled in rushed pen, dates, meetings, mentions of a lawyer named Barrett in Columbus, a reinstatement process that never happened. The letters were breadcrumbs, and the trail had been buried in the attic. I ran my hand along the inside of the box, and that's when I felt it, a soft ridge beneath the lining. I peeled back the cloth. A flash drive, no label, just taped to the wood. I held it up to the light. My fingers trembled. Why would he leave me a digital file? I slipped it into my pocket, heart hammering. But I wasn't done. The other folder in the chest caught my eye. It was thicker than the others. I opened it carefully. Photos, dozens of them. Dad and Emily, bank meetings, trips I was never told about, checks, deposits, and one document printed in bold, highlighted. Amendment to trust, Sarah Wallace removed due to redistribution of early fund access. No signature from me, none. Just Dad's and some notary I'd never met. It wasn't just betrayal. It was forgery, a crime. I sat there on the attic floor, wind hissing softly through the frame of the window, my breath clouding in front of me. For the first time, I realized I had something they didn't. Proof. This wasn't just about hurt feelings or bruised pride. This was about fraud, about theft, about how far someone would go to erase me from what was rightfully mine. A creak echoed below. I froze. Footsteps. I stuffed the documents back into my bag, slammed the box shut, and pocketed the key. Sarah? My blood turned to ice. Emily's voice. I hadn't even heard a car. I slipped the flashlight off the shelf beside me and stepped back, quiet, breath held. Sarah, I saw your car. Are you up there? She was at the bottom of the stairs now. I didn't answer. Something in her voice wasn't right. Too casual. Too late. She started up the steps. I just want to talk, she said. You don't have to run. I didn't move. Just stayed crouched. Still. She reached the top, and then eyes locked on mine across the attic. She smiled, like she already knew what I'd found. Emily's smile was wrong. It didn't reach her eyes. It was sharp, curved like a hook. The attic light caught the edge of her cheekbone as she took another step forward. You found it, huh? She said softly, like we were sisters gossiping over coffee, not enemies standing across decades of buried truth. I stood slowly, the flash drive burning a hole in my coat pocket. What exactly did I find? I asked. She shrugged. The version of the story Grandpa wanted you to believe. I stared at her. You knew. Not everything, just enough. Another step. The boards groaned beneath her boots. He kept journals, she added, nodding toward the chest. Letters, paranoia scribbled on printer paper like it was scripture. You were always his favorite, Sarah, even after he died. You forged my name, I said. You let Dad cut me out. Her lips twitched. I didn't forge anything. But you let it happen. She looked at me for a beat. then said with surgical precision, "You left. You moved away. You stopped showing up. So maybe we just filled in the blanks." I clenched my jaw. That was the second lie of the night. I had never stopped showing up. I just stopped being thanked for it. I didn't say anything else, just walked past her, slow, careful. I didn't trust the way she watched me, like she could already feel the power shifting. "Be careful with that drive," she said as I reached the stairs. "Not everything on it will make you feel vindicated." Her voice followed me down like a chill. I didn't look back. I drove home with my hands at 10 and 2, white-knuckled. The sky had turned a pale lavender by the time I reached the edge of the city. Everything inside me buzzed, sharp and tight and barely holding. Jake opened the door before I knocked. "Jesus," he said. "You okay?" "I need to show you something." I sat at the kitchen table, unzipped my coat, and pulled out the flash drive. My hands were trembling. We plugged it into his laptop, and for a long moment, the screen just spun. Then folders bloomed across the desktop. PDFs, scans, handwritten documents photographed against dark wood. A video file labeled only "Will Final." Jake leaned in. "You want to watch it?" "Not yet." I wasn't ready for that truth, not before I knew what else was here. We opened the first folder. Photos, scanned receipts, a bank ledger matching the one from the attic, but annotated, by Grandpa's hand it seemed, with angry red ink and the words, "Sarah's transfers, illegally redirected." Jake muttered, "This is intense." I flipped through more. One file stopped me cold. A draft of the original trust, pre-amendment. There was my name, full third split, a signature line for me, unsigned. Below it, a later amendment. My name removed, replaced by Emergency Family Allocation, EF account. "You see this?" I whispered. "This is what they did. They renamed my share." Jake looked at me, stunned. "That's fraud." I nodded. "And they've been laundering it through me for years." We sat in silence for a few minutes. Then softly, Jake said, "You can't take this on alone anymore." I blinked at him. "I've been thinking," he continued, "about what you said. How this always ends with you carrying everything. That has to stop." "I'm not sure anyone else knows how to carry it," I whispered. "Well, I do," he said, "and I'm not going anywhere." I felt something press against my chest, a knot that had been sitting there for too long. It didn't loosen, but it shifted, made room. Later that day, I met with two friends of Jake's, Liz and Daniel. Old college friends, both attorneys, both the kind of people who ask questions like, "How long have they been funneling money through that account?" before I even showed them the receipts. Liz flipped through the documents, eyebrows raised. "This isn't just theft," she said. "It's a long-term pattern. If the trust was mismanaged or misrepresented, there's real ground for recovery, possibly even restitution." Daniel nodded. "And if they forged your name, that's a felony." I sat there with my tea growing cold in my hands, unsure if I felt relief or dread. "What happens next?" I asked. Daniel exchanged a look with Liz. "You build your case, quietly, and you don't confront them again, at least not yet." "I already have," I murmured. They didn't look surprised. "We'll work with you," Liz said. "Document everything. Every text, every email, any more evidence, especially from that flash drive, back it up in 3 places. Keep 1 copy off-site." Jake added, "We can use my encrypted cloud server." I stared at them, this sudden team forming around me. Not because they owed me, not because I'd bought their loyalty, but because they believed me. For the first time in months, I didn't feel alone. But it wasn't over. That night, as I organized the files, my phone buzzed again. A message from a number I didn't recognize. "Ask Tom what he saw in 2007. Ask Tom what he saw in 2007. I stared at the message like it was a riddle I'd forgotten how to read. My thumb hovered over the screen, heart stammering like it already knew the answer wasn't something I wanted. I was 13. That was the year everything shifted, subtly, silently. The year Mom started hiding her tears in the laundry room. The year Emily stopped calling me sissy and started rolling her eyes at everything I said. The year Grandpa stopped coming around for Sunday dinners. I sat down at the kitchen table and opened the notebook again, flipping to the timeline I'd started with Liz and Daniel. Cross-referencing bank transactions, voice messages, copies of trust drafts. 2007 was marked, twice, a withdrawal, $10,000, then silence for 3 months. What happened that summer? I whispered to no one. I picked up the phone and called my father. He didn't answer, so I drove. The farmhouse was dark when I pulled up, not a single light in the window, but his truck was in the driveway, and I knew his patterns: beer by 7, sleep by 10, regret by dawn. I banged on the door, once, twice. He opened it on the third knock, shirt rumpled, jaw tense. "Jesus, Sarah, you know why I'm here?" He didn't pretend, just stepped aside. Inside, the house smelled stale, sour sweat, old wood, something deeper, like old secrets gone to rot. He didn't offer me a seat. I didn't take one. I got straight to it. "What happened in 2007? He stared at me, face blank. "Don't lie," I said. "I'm not asking." His mouth opened, closed. Then finally, "It wasn't supposed to involve you." I blinked. "What does that mean?" He rubbed a hand down his face. "Your grandfather had cancer. He didn't tell anyone at first. Just me." My breath hitched. "No one knew?" "Not even your mom," he said. "He told me in confidence, said he was getting his affairs in order, that he'd written new terms into the trust, made you the primary executor." My knees weakened. I leaned against the wall. "Why me?" "Because you were the only one he trusted." That landed like a slap. Not because it was praise, but because I could finally feel the weight of what it cost him. "So what changed?" I asked. "Why was I removed?" He hesitated. "I panicked," he said. "He was slipping. The treatments weren't working. He started forgetting things, repeating himself. I thought, maybe he wasn't thinking clearly anymore." I stared at him. "You thought that gave you the right to rewrite his legacy?" "I didn't rewrite it," he barked. "I just adjusted the numbers, eased things. Emily was struggling. Your mom and I had bills. I figured, what difference would it make if we accessed a little early?" My voice dropped. "You forged documents. You siphoned money. You tried to erase me. It wasn't supposed to get this far," he whispered. He sank into the couch, shoulders collapsing. "She always wanted it to be fair," he added. "Your mother, she said the girls should be treated equally." "And you agreed," I said, stepping closer, "as long as equal meant giving Emily more." His eyes flashed. "She was here. You weren't." That stung, but it didn't excuse anything. "She didn't earn what you gave her," I said. "You gave it to her because you were scared of what she'd become without a safety net. You gave it to her so you didn't have to admit you failed her." He didn't respond, just stared at the floor like it might open and swallow him. Then I asked the question I hadn't dared ask until now. "Was Grandpa's trust ever legally changed?" He didn't answer, so I pressed again. "Do you have the amendment with my name removed?" Finally, he looked up. "No," he said. And just like that, I knew. They'd never filed it. They'd forged it, used it, built an entire deception around it. But they never formalized it with the lawyer, because deep down, even they knew what they were doing was wrong. I turned to leave. "Sarah," he called after me. I stopped at the door. "I never meant for it to get this far." "You never meant for me to find out," I said. "That's not the same thing." I left without looking back. Back at Jake's, I pulled out the flash drive and searched again, this time through the 2007 folder. Inside was a scanned letter I hadn't noticed before, dated August 12, 2007, Grandpa's handwriting, a note to his lawyer, confirming a meeting to finalize a trust adjustment, naming me as the executor, and specifically requesting the clause not be changed without my approval. I sent it to Liz. 2 minutes later, she replied, "This changes everything." An hour later, she called. "I've reviewed everything. Sarah, you're still the legal executor of the trust." I sat down slowly. I thought it had to be formalized. "It was," she said. "Your grandfather submitted the form. The notary seal is valid. He never filed the amendment your father claimed." I stared at the screen. "So what happens now?" She exhaled. "Now? Now you take back control, and when you're ready, we go to court." As I hung up, another text came through. A photo. It was of Grandpa and a man I didn't recognize, both smiling, standing in front of a law office in Columbus. Below it, a message. He knew you'd come looking. I didn't sleep. Again. Instead, I sat at the dining table with my laptop open, the flash drive plugged in like a live wire, pulsing with everything I thought I knew, and everything I hadn't dared believe. Grandpa had made me executor. Legally. All this time, they'd acted like I was the backup, the outsider, the checkbook with a heartbeat. But I was the one he trusted most, and they buried that fact so deep it took me 15 years in a war zone of betrayal to dig it up. I stared at the screen, at the signature, at the notary seal, crisp and undeniable. The proof was real. Liz's voice rang in my ears from our earlier call. "This gives you standing. You have every right to assert control. The next move is yours. The next move." I glanced at the clock. 7:42 a.m. They'd be awake by now. Or at least Emily would be. I drafted the email slowly, every word deliberate. Subject line: Trust distribution. Effective immediately. To Emily Wallace, Thomas Wallace. CC, Liz Harrow, Daniel Cho. Effective immediately, I am assuming my full legal role as executor of the Edward F. Wallace Trust, per the 2007 directive filed and notarized under state law. I am freezing all remaining funds pending formal legal review. Further misappropriation or interference will be treated as breach of fiduciary duty. A formal court proceeding is underway. All correspondence should go through counsel from this point forward. I reread it 3 times, then hit send. Jake stepped into the room just as I closed the laptop. "You did it," he said. "I did it." He poured coffee, handed me a mug, then sat beside me. For a few minutes, we just sat in silence, watching the steam curl between us. Then my phone buzzed. Emily, voicemail. I pressed play. Her voice came in tight, clipped. "Are you out of your mind? You think you can just roll in and... what? Take back everything because Grandpa liked your handwriting? You're not a victim, Sarah. You're just bitter." She laughed once, sharp and hollow. "Well, let's see how long you last now that you've got the crown. Hope you're ready to explain to everyone why their money just vanished overnight." She hung up. I closed my eyes, heart pounding, jaw clenched so tight it hurt. "I guess she got the message," Jake said softly. "She got it," I said. "She just didn't like it." That afternoon, Liz walked me through the next steps. Court petitions, emergency injunctions, asset audits. My head spun, but I followed every word, until she paused. "There's one more thing," she said. "I pulled recent activity on the EF account." I tensed. There was a transfer 3 weeks ago, almost $9,000, labeled emergency repairs, but it went to a contractor out of state, in Colorado. "Colorado?" I asked. "We don't own anything there." "You don't," she said, "but someone does." She sent me the address, a 3-bedroom cabin in the Rockies, purchased last spring, under a shell company. Emily's name was on the purchase record. Jake looked over my shoulder as I stared at the screen. "Paid with trust money," I whispered. And suddenly I saw it. Emily's smug smile at Thanksgiving, her expensive outfit, her offhand joke about buying air purifiers for her apartment. It wasn't just fraud anymore. It was embezzlement, and she wasn't even hiding it well. "Time to bring it all down," I said. I met Liz the next morning at the courthouse. The building was old, red brick, tall windows, the kind of place that smelled like dust and ink and endings. We filed everything. By the time I left, my name was stamped on a dozen legal motions. This time, it was me writing the story. Not them, but the day wasn't done. At 4:18 p.m., I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. A man's voice. "Sarah Wallace?" "Yes." "My name is Marcus Hale. I was your grandfather's financial advisor." I stood completely still. "I've been watching this unfold from a distance, and I have information I think you need to see." "What kind of information?" "About a second trust," he said, "one nobody ever filed." My blood ran cold. "Why are you telling me now?" "Because your grandfather left a letter with my firm, said it was only to be delivered if you ever challenged the family publicly." I didn't breathe. "I'll email it to you tonight," he said. "And Sarah?" "Yes?" "He believed you'd get here. Every word he wrote for you." The call ended, and then, just like that, my inbox pinged. A PDF, labeled, for her eyes only, EFW. I clicked it open. The first line? If you're reading this, Sarah, it means they finally pushed you too far. I read the letter twice, then a third time. Each word felt like a hand on my back, steadying me, reminding me of who I was before I learned how to shrink to survive. Grandpa's voice lived in the sentences, firm, thoughtful, laced with quiet fire. If you're reading this, Sarah, it means they finally pushed you too far. And I'm glad. Not because I wanted this for you, but because you needed to know silence isn't loyalty, and love doesn't mean erasing yourself for the comfort of others. Below it was the final instruction. Take it to Barrett. He knows what to do. Barrett was the lawyer named in the documents. I didn't know him personally, but I knew what the next step meant. Control, ownership, truth made legal. The following morning, I met with him in a quiet office outside Columbus. His walls were lined with law books, but the only thing I focused on was the original trust. Filed, stamped, signed. He looked me in the eye and said, "You have full authority now. Every misused cent, every unauthorized transfer, every forged document, you can challenge all of it." And I did. Court proceedings were faster than anyone expected. The moment Emily was served, her lawyer tried to negotiate. But I didn't flinch. They'd had their turn at rewriting the truth. Now it was mine. In the courtroom, I saw Dad sitting next to her. Smaller somehow. Not physically, but in the way people look when their excuses collapse in public. He wouldn't look at me, not once. But Emily did. And when she realized I wasn't bluffing, that the flash drive, the notarized documents, and the emails between her and the shady contractor were all admissible, she cracked. Not loudly, just a single whisper as I walked past her. "You never really loved this family." I didn't respond, because that wasn't true. I had loved them, all of them. But love built on conditions and silence isn't love. It's obedience, and I wasn't obedient anymore. The judge ruled in my favor. The trust was restored. My role as executor reinstated. All further withdrawals frozen pending an audit. The Colorado property was seized. Emily was ordered to repay what she couldn't prove was legally hers. And I? I walked out of that courtroom weightless. Later, standing on Grandpa's land, I let the wind tangle my hair, the air cool and crisp around me. It smelled of pine and old tobacco, like him. Jake stood beside me, arms crossed, quiet. "You gonna keep the house?" he asked. I looked up at the porch, the peeling paint, the attic window that held the chest, the letters, the key. "I think I have to." "Why?" "Because it holds the truth," I said, "and I want to build something honest from it." He nodded once. "Then we'll do it together." We walked inside. There were things to fix, broken floorboards, rusted fixtures, stained walls, but none of it felt like burden anymore. It felt like beginning. A month later, I set up a fund, not for the family, but for young women like me, raised to be peacekeepers, taught to disappear for everyone else's comfort. The first recipient sent me a letter. She wrote, "I never thought someone like me could be chosen for something good. Thank you for making me believe I matter." And I sat in my kitchen and cried, not from sadness, but because someone finally said it out loud, that I mattered. All along, that's what this fight was about. Not money, not revenge, but recognition. It took betrayal to show me where my boundaries should be. It took silence to teach me the power of using my voice. And it took loss, real, ugly loss, to help me find the people who would never ask me to shrink. If you've watched this far, thank you for being part of this story. If it stirred something in you, if you've ever been the quiet one in a loud room, or the giver in a family of takers, know this. You don't have to stay small just to keep the peace. Sometimes, burning the script is the only way to write a better ending. If you loved this story, hit subscribe, like, and share. Leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And don't forget to check out our next video for more stories like this one.